Hello, I'd like to thank you for purchasing the Stepp SBF bottom fired kettle. Today we are going to go over the safe operation of the unit. My name is Jason Stepp, third generation in the company, but we're going to go over the safe operation of the functions on this unit, how to load this unit, how to safely load the unit, and get you trained up so that you can use this unit safely. So I like to start at the front of the machine, and we're going to kind of work our way back. So we're going to do a little repositioning with the camera here, and then we're going to get right into it. Alright, so I always like to start at the front of the trailer and work our way back. So the first thing we're going to start with is the hitch, which is obviously very simple and a lot of common sense, but there's some things on here that I see from time to time with municipalities that they don't do, and it's to protect really the driver, the operator of the truck that's towing this vehicle. Obviously we're set up with an adjustable hitch. We always recommend that you get the kettle as level as you can, because we are dealing with a liquid product in our tank. So there's a series of different holes to adjust your hitch height. So we suggest that you do get your hitch level so that your trailer is nice and level. If you're tongue low or tongue high, the axle doesn't care and the trailer doesn't care, but the liquid inside the tank does. Obviously if it's down real low, the front of the kettle is going to be full, and the baffles aren't going to work like they need to. The unit's equipped with trailer lights and electric brakes on both tires. So make sure that you have good working lights. One of the pre-trip inspections that we always recommend that you do is check your lights and your brakes for functionality. And again, that's the driver's responsibility, the licensed driver that's towing this. The unit does come with 2 safety chains, so in the event of a disconnect, the safety chains are going to prevent your trailer from completely coming off and going into traffic. The last thing we're going to talk about, which is I find is one of the more important things on the unit, is the safety breakaway. And again, this is set up to safely, in the event of a disconnect, if the trailer hitch breaks or someone forgets to close it, this is going to pull out of the trailer and lock up the trailer brakes on the unit. I see this very often tied up or not being used. And again, this is to protect the driver. In the event of a disconnect, for whatever reason, the hitch falls off the truck, someone doesn't hook it up, if there is an accident, the licensed driver is going to be at fault because they didn't have the safety mechanism hooked up, because that's really there to lock those brakes up in the event of a disconnect. So obviously the hitch stuff is always very basic, but I always do like to spend a little bit of time going over that, because again, that's to protect you guys as drivers or as operators of this equipment, in the event of a disconnect for some reason. We're just going to kind of keep working our way back on the machine. The machine is equipped with a 12-volt battery. The battery does a couple of things on our unit for us. Inside the battery box here, you'll see there's going to be terminal strips with our wire harnesses coming into that. A couple of things going on here. Obviously the 12-volt battery runs the control system for our burner system. It also supplies power to our electric brakes when that breakaway is pulled. So that energizes the brake system also. You do need to make sure that you have a charge wire, which is wired through the light plug, to maintain that battery at all times. Any trailer in the United States with electric brakes has to have a battery to operate those electric brakes. So you do need to maintain that. And then we're also using that Group 24 battery to run the burner system and the spark ignition, which we're going to go over here just in a few minutes. So make sure you have a good supply of power through the towing wire. Refer to the owner's manual. It'll show you the wiring schematic for that light plug. It's a pretty standard industry-wide wiring schematic. Right behind the battery box, we have a battery charger. So this is designed, obviously you plug it in, there's a little plug-in on the other side. I know it's a little tough to see in the trailer, but you're just going to plug your cord in, and that's a battery maintainer. That's going to bring your battery up to fully charge. Once it comes up to charge, it's going to go into a float mode and then just maintain that battery voltage. What's nice about this battery charger system that we use, it's a marine grade sealed charger, so this can be outside. If you plug it in, now you can run your burner system without having it hooked to the towing vehicle, which is kind of nice for heat up in the morning when we're getting things cooking and getting things melted down. We can have that plugged in, and not have to worry about the towing vehicle running to maintain our battery. The nice thing about the LP burner systems is they don't use a lot of power. You could probably get through half to 3/4, maybe even a full day on a fully charged battery without charging it from the tow vehicle, you know, because it doesn't take a lot of power to run. The downside is if we're out there and we're working with it and we get halfway through the day and the battery does die, now we have no burner. So we still do highly recommend that we get that light plug hooked up, you know, so that we're constantly charging that battery from the towing vehicle. But that battery charger is a really nice option. I always recommend that you plug it in, because then in the morning you have a fresh battery when you're starting too. One of the biggest issues that we've had over the years is low voltage, because they don't have a good connection between the tow vehicle and the trailer, you know, with that charge system. So the unit's equipped with a fire extinguisher. I think everyone knows how to operate one of those. Hopefully you never have to, but we will go over the safe heating and some of that stuff also in a little bit. The unit's equipped with 2 LP bottle racks. I just have a couple of 20-pounders on here right now. It's designed for the 100-pound bottles. You know, make sure that they're strapped down and secured here. This is very important that you make sure that this is strapped down, because obviously if we're going down the road and a bottle falls off, that's a very dangerous situation. Be very careful when you're lifting these bottles in and out. You know, you specified to put these inside the trailer frame for protection, but it does make it a little bit more challenging to get the bottles on and off. So again, a little bit of common sense goes there. When you're lifting heavy bottles, make sure you get some equipment involved to do that. They're set up with a couple ratchet straps to hold those bottles on, you know, and secured. The bottle racks are also adjustable in height, so you can, you know, with the bolt holes here, you can adjust the bottle rack height if you choose to, you know, raise or lower them. That's a preference up to you guys. The unit's set up to run off of propane, vapor bottle propane. It is set up with a dual tank system, and with the vapor withdrawal systems versus the liquid, you really need to have at least 2 bottles on here. In cold weather operations, you could run into, you know, problems with your tanks freezing up, not producing enough vapor. So with the vapor draw system, you need to have 2 bottles on here. They both have an individual shut-off valve, so you can run one tank or the other. With the vapor systems also, you can only run at about 14 psi max, which we'll talk a little bit, you know, more in depth when we change the camera so you can see the burner systems, because the higher pressures just won't fire. So you need to have about 14 psi. All right, so the next thing we're going to go over is the service valves and the filters for the pilot lights. So how the burner system operates is when we turn the power switch on, the spark ignition comes on, it starts to spark, the solenoid opens up and allows gas to go through these lines down into the pilot light. So this is just the pilot light. So initially the pilot light's going to light. Once the pilot light is lit, there is a sensor in the pilot light that, you know, senses the flame. If for some reason the pilot light doesn't light, it's going to try for reignition. If it doesn't reignite the second time, then it's going to go into a lockout mode and shut that off, and it will not allow fuel to go to that burner any longer. So if it does that, for some reason it doesn't light, the only way you can reset it is to manually turn the power switch off in the control box and turn it back on. We'll go over that in just a little bit. But inside these, you know, in here in this system, there's a filter and a pre-orifice, and then just a service valve here. So this would turn off the fuel to the pilot light. From there, once the pilot light lights and our thermostat says, hey, call for heat, we need fire, we need to start melting asphalt, it'll open up the main solenoid, which will send fuel down to each individual burner. This particular unit has a dual burner system on it. You can turn off one or both burners if you want, with the manual service valves here also. And you can also regulate, you know, how hot, you know, your burner is firing with those. You do have to be a little careful. If you get it too low, you'll get a fluttery flame. It'll actually start to melt wires and things because it's not shooting the flame into the hopper itself. Again, this is a spark ignition with constant ignition. So the spark igniter lights the pilot light lights the burner. Is how that operates. So normally in the morning what I'm going to do is these 2 burner valves, I'll have them off. I'm going to light it, make sure that my pilot light's light, And then once I know my pilot lights are lit, I'm going to set my thermostat and then open my valves to allow that to burn. So I'm going to briefly fire this so you can hear the spark ignition. You can hear the sparkers, you hear the pilot lights light. Once they light, the spark ignition shuts off. If for some reason it blows out or you run out of fuel, it's going to try for reignition, and then once it reignites, then it's going to, start. So I'm going to turn the burners on. So obviously you can hear them firing. Now the one thing I forgot to tell you is this unit is equipped with a stack. We'll zoom out here in a minute. If the stack is closed, the burners will not fire, well, they'll fire, but they will not fire properly, and you get into a situation where you're going to melt the wires and stuff like that. So there's a stack rain cover that you need to open. I'm going to shut that off so I don't have to talk over it. Now at the end of the day, when we're done for the day, what I will do is shut the LP bottles off at the valves and let the fuel burn out and bleed down. That's just me, the preference that I like to do is get that LP out of the line. And then tomorrow morning when we turn the lines on, it'll fill up and fire right up. So there's not a whole lot of service on the burners, that part of it's fairly simple, and the big thing with LP fuel is just make sure you have good clean fuel, because if you do get some gummy stuff in your fuel, it can plug up some of the small orifices. But we'll go over some of that stuff in the maintenance video for the mechanics. So we're gonna reposition the camera and kind of show you the controls, and then also how the big top hood works and the barrel loading system works next. So the next thing we're going to do is go over the control system, and on the side of the control box, and we'll zoom in on this in just a minute, there is an operating system here, or an operating chart for your burner system and your controls. So the unit, like I said, is equipped with spark ignition automatic temperature controls. So what that means is when we hit the power switch, the burners come on, and light. When the thermostat calls for heat, it actually starts the burners. So the pilot lights are always going to be lit and run all day. If the power switch is on, the pilot lights will be on. If the thermostat is calling for heat, that's the only time the burners will be on. So the thermostat here, this watt-low controller, is controlling the burners, not the pilot lights. So the pilot lights, if the power switch is on, the pilot lights are always running. The only time the pilot lights are off is if the switch is off or if the unit is out of fuel. The only time the burners are going to be on, the main burners that are heating the tank up, the only time the main burner is going to be on is when this thermostat is calling for heat. So when I say calling for heat, what that means is if I have, say, my set point at 100 degrees and my kettle shows 60 degrees, I'm now calling for heat. So the thermostat, just like the thermostat in your house, when the temperature drops, the thermostat's going to kick the burner system on to maintain that temperature. So there's two different digital readouts, and they might be a little tough to see with the sun today, but there's two different digital readouts on here on the thermostat controller. The very top one is going to be what you're actually reading, what your material temperature is. There's a temperature probe that goes inside the tank, inside a metal pipe, so that'll be reading the actual temperature of your material. The bottom temperature is going to be your set point. So that's going to be whatever we want it to be. So depending on what type of product that we're using, will depend on what we're going to set that. Now, with any type of bottom-fired or flue-fired kettle, we do have to make sure that we allow for a little bit of creep. So what creep means is, if I want my product to be 300 degrees, and I set my set point at 300 degrees, my burner's going to run until my kettle is 300 degrees, then my burner's going to shut off, and that we've heated all that metal up, and it's going to continue to raise the temperature. So I always tell guys, especially on the initial fire in the morning when the kettle's cold, 50 to 25 to 50 degrees less than your product temperature until we get up to temperature. And then, once the kettle gets up, to that set point, then I'm going to bump the temperature up after that. And all we're doing there is, again, trying to prevent creep, the heat from, even though the burners are off, that steel is still heating that metal up, or heating up that product. So just allow for a little bit of creep in there. It's not catastrophic. The one thing I cannot stress enough is know your materials. Know what you're heating, what the safe heating temperatures are, what the flash points are. If you don't know what the product that you're using, contact your foreman. They need to supply you with that MSDS sheet and the safe operations of that material. This kettle is capable of heating many different types and configurations of asphalt. The kettle itself does not care. The kettle is set up with a 0 to 550 thermostat, so it can get up to 550 degrees, which, you know, some of the high temperature asphalt products are close to that. But it also can run water-based emulsions that run at 180 degrees. So depending on the product that you're using, it's going to be depending on what you set that at. But know the safe heating temperature of your products. Know the flash points. Have safety equipment. Make sure that you're trained on how to use the kettle. And if for some reason someone does overheat it and catch a kettle on fire, you know, make sure you know how to use a fire extinguisher. Make sure that you have a burn kit in case someone gets burned. Never, ever, ever use water to put out an asphalt kettle if it is on fire, because it's like oil and water. It's just really thick, black, stinky oil, but it's oil and water. You know, oil and water don't mix. So make sure that if you do have a fire, you know, that they use a dry chemical or a foam type to put the kettle out in the event of a fire. And we are going to go over the safe operation of loading and unloading, is where you know, potentially could get burned or splashed with asphalt if you're not using the kettle properly. But back to the control box again, we have a main power switch here, which is going to power everything up. It's going to light that. I don't know if you can see that in the sun. You know, but our top temperature is what we're reading, the bottom temperature is what we're set at. I'm going to shut that off so I don't have to toggle over it. So the thermostat itself has 5 buttons. The only buttons that do anything for you guys as operators are the up and down arrows. So that's going to be your set point of your product, is you're going to change that. The other 3 buttons are actually for the programming of the thermostat itself, because that thermostat can do many different things. So just the up and down arrows. If you hold it, it'll ramp up quick. If you hold it down, it'll ramp down quick. You know, very basic, very simple, very similar to the thermostat that you have on your wall to run your furnace in your house. Or your air conditioning. We have a strobe light switch, pretty self-explanatory there. It's just on or off. If you do leave that on, your battery will be dead in the morning. So make sure that you turn that switch off at the end of the night. Because the strobe light will work even if the main power switch is off, because they're wired independently of each other. Because you may be traveling down the road with the strobe light on and not traveling with the burner. That is a question that comes up to me quite often with all of our different types of asphalt equipment that we manufacture is, can I drive down the road with this thing burning? We don't ever recommend at Stepp Manufacturing that you drive down the road with a burner system firing. And the reason is because in the event of an accident, in the event of a rollover situation or in a rear end situation, you have an open source of flame. You have 300 gallons of liquid petroleum-based product, and you have 2 100-pound LP cylinders on here. So you guys could probably do the math there, as it's not a safe situation in an accident. So we always highly recommend that you come in the morning, heat your kettle up, get your kettle up to temperature, shut your burner system off, go to your job site, and once you get to the job site, then restart your burner system and you know, get your kettle heating. The tank and the kettle is insulated, so it does hold its heat very well. You know, if you're going from, you know, one side of town to the other, the kettle's not going to completely get cold. You know, you might have to warm it up for 10 minutes when you get to the job site, but you're never going to, you know, completely solidify the material in there. It's too well insulated to do that. So again, we highly recommend that you don't drive with the burner system firing, and obviously that's to protect you, the operator, and, you know, whoever's around you in the event of an accident, because that source of flame. The other thing we put in here is all right, so the next thing we're going to go over, obviously we went over the safe operation of the burner system, you know, whether to tow the unit firing or not, you know, so we've gone through that. So the next thing that we're going to spend some time on is the loading system of the kettle, you know, and the safe operation of how to load this kettle. So this kettle is equipped with a pretty unique system. It's equipped with a barrel loading hoist and a barrel loading basket. So the basket's actually inside the kettle, where the hoist, obviously you can see, is located out here. And what this is designed to do is to be able to pick up a barrel of asphalt, swing it over and set it into the basket. Then we close the cover and then we lower that down in. So I actually have an empty barrel here today. I'm going to just go through the, you know, how the whole system works. so that you can see how to safely load this. So obviously there's a pin in the boom so that it doesn't swing when you're going down traffic. First thing I'm going to do is just take my chain out of the loop to get it out of the way. So that's just your hoist to go up and down. So we're going to unpin this thing first. So now you're going to see the boom can swing. So what I'm going to do is loosen up the chain hoist. And it's a pretty simple basic hoist system. So once we loosen that, then I could take the barrel hooks out. And we could swing this boom around. So you can see, I mean, obviously the barrel hook's designed to go on the end of the barrels, and we're going to operate that here in just a minute. But I'm going to show you how to open up the hood. It is set up with a safety latch on here to prevent the hood from coming open. It also has hood breakers on here, so when the hoods get glued down with asphalt, you can get the hood broke loose and lift that hood up off of there. So now the hood itself is set up with a gas assist shock. I don't know if you can see it over there in the front, but we'll give you a shot here of it in just a minute, to help you lift that hood. So I'm going to go around the back and lift that hood while we keep filming here so you can see how this basket works. Now on the hood, you'll see I have a couple of pins. We're going to open up the hood, and then we're going to pin the hood in the open position, so that for some reason the hood doesn't blow shut or slam shut while you're trying to load this. Now obviously all these little safety devices that we have in here are to protect you, the operator, you know. And if you don't use them as the operator, you know, and it's not going to protect you. So what I just did there was I rolled up inside the kettle, and we'll give you a shot of this. There's a basket that's in here, and it's just made out of chain that's welded with some rods to support the barrel when we swing it over and set it on top. So once the barrel's in there, then we're going to close the hood and then lower the barrel down inside the asphalt. So again, I'm going to show you with the barrel here. So you can obviously see that that's designed to hook on the lip of the barrel. So make sure that you're hooked on the lip of the barrel good. Then we're going to lift the barrel. It's a little noisy because my barrel's empty, but obviously if this barrel's full of asphalt, it's, you know, 500 pounds. So, I mean, this really takes the weight out of that job. So once we get that barrel up high enough, we're then going to swing the barrel carefully. Now, this is one thing I do want to make sure, when you're up high enough, I'm going to bring my chain back over and stick it through the loop. Because if you get your chain full of asphalt, your hands are going to be sticky and gooey all day when you're operating that chain. So I just hung that chain back up. Now I'm going to swing the barrel with the boom carefully. And I'm going to set it right inside my kettle. Now again, I'm going to unhook my chain, and I'm going to slowly lower that barrel. Now before you lower that barrel, you need to make sure over here that your handle is down and it's locked, so that when we drop that barrel on, it can't go anywhere. And it's got a big hook and a spring on here, you know, to make sure that when you set that barrel in, it's resting on there. Now the nice thing about this hoist is it's not overly fast. So when you lower it down in, it's not going to be a real fast process that's doing that in. So once I lower it, I'm going to unhook my barrel hooks. I'm going to get this out of my way. So So now you can see your barrel sitting and resting in there, and I didn't get it overly centered. So you're going to get your barrel in the center. Now we're going to close the hood. We're going to close the hood on top of the barrel. Now, obviously, because my barrel's empty, it's kind of floating all over there. When you have your heavy barrel in there, once you set it in there, it's going to set in there. So now at this point, I'm going to grab a hold of my wheel. I'm going to just move it enough to get my handle unlatched. Then I'm going to pull my handle all the way over. And we're going to reposition the camera here so you can see this. So now this handle is going to act kind of like a brake. So as I start to let it down, if the wheel gets away from me, I can slam the brake down and it'll stop it, from dropping that barrel in fast. So now we're just going to lower it down nice and slow. And once we're to the bottom, then I'm going to flip it back over and lock it. Now I'm going to open the hood up so you can see that barrel's down inside there now. And again, when the hood's open, I'm going to pin it so that nothing can prevent that from blowing in. So now we've lowered that. Maybe we're going to lower it a little bit more. We've lowered that barrel right into the bottom of the kettle. So 110% splash-free loading if you operate this properly. If you leave the basket down and we swing that over and drop it in, there's a good chance you get splashed with hot asphalt. And we don't recommend that. Obviously, we want you to operate this piece of equipment safely. But you can see we can lower that 500-pound barrel of asphalt or 400-pound barrel of asphalt down into that kettle with the cover being completely closed. Do not ever lower the barrel down with the hood open. Even though it makes sense, it seems easy, it's simple, it's just not safe practice. And if you do that, you do run the risk of getting splashed. If someone's operating the wheel and they let go of the handle by accident and that thing goes down in there and splashes, guess what? It's going to splash out of there. So we always recommend that the barrel cover is closed. I opened it here so you could see that, and we're gonna zoom in so you can kind of see that barrel loading basket a little bit better. But this is how you're going to safely operate that. When you're ready to take, when the barrel is empty, and we're ready to take the barrel out, we're going to roll that barrel up, and you can see, it's got a cog or a star-shaped wheel, so you're going to go one click and it's going to stop. But we can run that all the way up to the top. Now we can go over and fish our empty barrel out. Now you'll notice that the barrel hoist is set up to drain. So you obviously want your drains on the back side because it is set up at an angle on purpose so that we can drain the oil out of that barrel. So again, the safe operation of this is load your barrel in using your hoist, close your cover, lower your barrel down in, let the barrel melt out. Once the barrel's melted out with the cover closed, we're going to then wheel the empty barrel up and take the barrel out. So we're going to take a couple shots of that barrel loading system here while we've got it in there. And then we'll just kind of go over the back end of the machine. Well, we could do that right now, actually. We're just about done. The unit is equipped with 2 thermometers plus the digital thermostat in the unit. There's a thermometer in the front, thermometer in the back. They may read differently because we are reading in different parts of the tank. You have to remember that. This thermometer is reading the back end. That thermometer is reading the front end. The thermostat in the control box is reading through a different temperature probe tube. So you may see variations, but as we get heated up and get closer to getting that product up to temperature, we're going to see those all level out pretty good. It is set up with a molasses gate valve that is lockable. So if you do choose to lock that, which isn't a bad idea in the event of our tank is hot, now we're going to park it and we're going to go home. If you have the potential for vandalism, someone comes and opens that valve up when the kettle's still hot, it could pour out. You do also have just a separate bung in here if you ever need to add a second bung or an electric overnight heater or anything like that. It's already pre-equipped with that. The unit has a license plate bracket on it. Obviously your tail lights and the sealed junction boxes in the back. that's all pretty self-explanatory also. Not a whole lot of maintenance. There is, inside this mechanism, there is a chain drive, and that's what gives us our gear reduction. The bearing itself is on slots, so if the chain starts to slip, you just need to tighten that tensioner up by sliding that wheel. Again, that's something you're probably going to have the mechanics do. With that, we're going to take some pictures of that inside barrel cover, and that kind of concludes our training today. We'd like to thank you for purchasing our products. If you have any operational questions or service-related questions, please feel free to give us a call. Our telephone number is located a couple places on the unit. It's on the sticker on the side. It's also up on the VIN tag on the front of the trailer. But our telephone number is 651-674-4491. Please feel free to call us at any time with any questions about operations or the safe use of this product. We'd like to thank you for purchasing our products, and we look forward to doing business with you in the future. Thank you.